Our guest today is David Gross, and he's with Clutch Global Logistics, a company that is transforming the forwarding industry with a fresh perspective and unwavering commitment to excellence. They strive to make international shipping easy and limit the stress. International logistics can be very complex and frustrating as an endeavor. They provide peace of mind by simplifying things in order to make things easier for their customers. They've been instrumental in setting new standards for the industry, not only tackling common challenges and frustrations that plague logistics, but also redefined what exceptional service really looks like. The team at Clutch Global understands that the key to success lies in prioritizing customer needs over mere shipment volumes and margins. With a keen focus on addressing the root cause of industry complaints, Clutch Global stands out as a beacon of reliability and innovation. So please welcome David Gross, one of the leaders in Clutch Global, where they manage the experience. So welcome, David.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be
Yes.
here.
Tell me a little bit about what is logistics, what is forwarding, because there's probably a lot of people that ship domestically and they really don't have a clue about what it is and why you need it.
Well, it's funny because I I would say, well, 100% of companies that ship domestically, I would say 20 to 30% of those companies have international needs, whereas 100% of companies that ship internationally have 20 have domestic needs. 100% of those companies have domestic needs.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you ship something on a domestic standpoint, it might go from dock to dock, point A to point B, maybe point A to C. But when you ship internationally, there's so many complexities that come into shipping internationally that your whole supply chain could be 12 links compared to 2 links or 3 links on a domestic front. There's a lot more compliance related issues, a lot more documentation that has to happen, a lot more requirements by other countries that you need to adhere to when shipping internationally. So what we do is try to make it easy for people so that they can ship their goods abroad or bring product in from another country.
That's a real specialty because not everybody can do this. So, yeah, thanks for telling us about that.
No, my pleasure. Our company, we try to be as personal as we can, um, accessible as we can, and put processes in place that support our customers, and then using technology and the process that we've put in place to try to help our customers grow their business. That's our goal.
What are some of the obstacles your company has had to address regarding customers looking to start shipping goods internationally?
Some of the, obstacles, well, especially obstacles that we've dealt with in the last probably 5 years, with COVID and with everything that's hit, port congestion came to
Mhm.
be a major criteria that people were just dealing with. And there was no way around it. Some customers were, you know, convinced that if they went with a large forwarding company, they'd get around the port congestion. But the port congestion, as was on all the TV stations, and you heard it everywhere. You had 180 vessels that were parked, off the coast, west coast, trying to get to a port just to get their vessels unloaded. So you look at it as that was the biggest challenge, I would say, in the last
Mhm.
5 to 10 years. Because you look at it as if you took a tube and you were
Mhm.
pouring water through a tube. And then what you did is you basically squeezed the tube and made it into a funnel.
Mhm.
However, the amount of water that you poured in the tube never changed. So
Mhm.
what happened is it overflow. You had a complete overflow, and all of that were the vessels that were anchored off the coast, the West Coast, waiting to get to a port just to get in and get offloaded. That was a trickle down effect and happened to impact trucking, happened to impact the
Mhm.
rails. So it was a global issue. Then you add in what we're dealing with now with the conflicts in the Middle East and,
Mhm.
the Red
Yeah.
Sea and the hijacking. That is once again impacted things globally, both from a rate standpoint and from a
Mhm.
vessel, you know, capabilities and vessel
Mhm.
availability. So a lot of ocean carriers have um, changed their vessel routings in order to support different areas of the world. And that's been a challenge as well. Some things that we did during the port congestion, for example, most of the freight that comes into the US comes into the West Coast. And when there are issues in Long Beach, which is the primary port on the West Coast, companies tend to move up the coast. So they go to
Mhm.
either Oakland, Tacoma, Seattle, Vancouver. Rates tend to get a little cheaper as you go up that coast. However, when everybody does it at the same time, all of those ports now become
Mhm.
overflown, and it's the same issue that Long Beach had with the port congestion now falls into all those other ports. One thing that we did that helped to combat this is we routed freight to through Savannah to Atlanta, and then we cross-docked shipments onto a truck and trucked them into Chicago. The transit time was a lot longer and is a little bit more expensive, but at the same time, it wasn't as expensive or as delayed as going through the West Coast ports. So just things that we do in order to help our customers through the tough times of either labor strikes or port congestion due to COVID, um, or what's happening, in the Middle East at the current times.
So it sounds like flexibility is the key in order to get the goods here to your customers so that they can get them to their customers.
I would definitely agree with that. You have to be flexible and you have to, you know, there are companies out there from a forwarding aspect who have, here's our mold. It's a square mold. And if your
Mm.
business is a square and fits into that mold, we'll take it. If it doesn't, then we don't want it. We don't operate that way. We try to be flexible with our customers and work with our customers to try to design a supply chain that works for them and the needs of their company. And I think, I've been in this business for over 30 years, and flexibility is something that you have to be. You have to be able to pivot and work with the customers in order to make them successful.
Tell me how you differentiate your company from its competition.
Well, as I said, our pillars of our company are accessible, personal, process, and technology. So, one thing we do that I think others don't, and that's from what we hear from our customers,
Mhm.
we try to work backwards in a shipment. So we try to ask our customers, what is a commitment date or the final date that it has to be where it has to be?
Mhm.
Once we have that, then we work backwards to find out what's the correct mode, what and when can the product be available to ship, because that can dictate things. Let's say you have a drop dead date that you have to have the product there within 28 days, right? Ocean's going to be very, very difficult to meet that need. So
Mhm.
it might need to go air freight. So
Mhm.
once we have the commitment date, then we can move backwards and say, okay, if you want to hit that commitment date and you want to move it via ocean, let's say, it has to be ready by this date. If it's
Mhm.
not ready by that date, it'll have to go via air. Air freight is, can be 5 times more expensive than ocean freight. So everybody, when price comes into play, ocean is probably the most comfortable means to ship something. Now, some products have to be sent via air freight. There's just no way around it due to time or due to the commodity or what it is that's being shipped. We So that's one thing. We work with our customers to design a plan for their products to get to the United States or get to their customers in a timely fashion, and we try to work backwards. The other thing that I would say sets us apart from our competition is that we're accessible, and you don't. Some companies you get a phone tree, and or you're dealing with AI, and you
Mm,
call up a company and how many times do you call a company and you say, I just want to speak to a person. I just want to speak to a customer service
right.
representative. You're going to deal with the same person on your shipment throughout that
Mhm.
shipment. So you're not going to deal with multiple people. You're not going to have to explain yourself 10 times over to a new person every time you
Mhm.
pick up the phone. And I would also say, what puts us apart from our competitors is the fact that I tell every employee that works for our company that there's no such thing as bad news. The only bad news is news that's never given.
Mm.
So, there's a lot of different areas where things go awry, right? And forwarders tend to hide behind a rock and not want to call their customers to give bad news. They'd rather hope that it works its way out and they don't have to talk to the customer in order to, communicate bad news to them. We don't operate like that. We give you the good and the bad
And
so
that's a
that
good
you
thing because, too many times customers have needs of their customers and they can't even transmit the information because they don't know.
exactly. And if you
Yeah.
don't know, you can't
Mhm.
service the needs of your customers, which allows you to be successful in this day and age.
Mhm. Are you able to provide an example of how your company has provided a different approach to international shipping for your customers?
Well, if you look at a company, one comes to example where they wanted to, in order to compete with their competitors, they had to start um, supplying goods from overseas. So
Mhm.
they had to change their whole way of thinking in order to be competitive with their competitors.
Mhm.
So, they came to us and asked what, we could do to help this because duties and taxes were outrageous based on what they were bringing in. So what we did is we did an analysis with that customer in order to classify their goods and see what the duty rate was going to be for everything. So when I talk duty, every piece of freight that comes into the US is assigned a harmonized tariff code based on what the commodity of the shipment is. That code is then classified within the U.S. Customs to assign a duty rate to the goods coming in. What we did on this particular instance is we worked with Customs and put together a binding ruling to allow them to have a duty-free basis for this product that was being brought in.
Mhm.
And that binding ruling is then um, approved by customs and put into place so that the goods then would come into the U.S. uh, under a duty-free HTS code. Then we looked at how they were going to bring the goods in, and this particular company, when they were bringing goods in, they were bringing them in whenever they needed them. So we worked on consolidating their shipments to bring them into the U.S. to reduce the amount of taxes and fees that were associated with importing. An example of that would be if you brought in 10 shipments separately, you'd have to clear customs on 10 separate shipments. Whereas if
Mm.
you consolidated them, you could clear those shipments under one clearing, which then reduces your cost from an import basis. Um, Customer was very, very happy with the results, and we ended up saving them a lot of money. For the amount of freight that they imported, it was in the millions, and we saved them approximately 6 cents per dollar in that shipping.
Wow, that can add up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. What are a few problems that companies are dealing with now, and how have you helped them to overcome them?
I would say some examples, like I said, we try to work
Mhm.
backwards. Everybody, they look at the price of shipping, and it's gone crazy. I mean, from the amount
Mhm.
of during COVID, pricing was, a normal shipment to come in from, let's say, Shanghai to Chicago was between $5,000 and $6,000, whereas during COVID, it was up to $30,000 in
Ooh.
some instances for one shipment.
Mm.
So, I think looking at customers and helping them to design a supply chain that works for them. Is it just in time inventory that they need? They need it just in time, or is it just in case? The difference is, a lot of companies will have just in case inventory, which means they stock inventory here in the US in case they need it. Whereas just in
Mhm.
time, they try to order accordance with the orders that they have in from their customers. Um, Working with the customer as a partner and helping them develop what their supply chain looks like is one area that we, try to work as closely as possible with our customers in order to define what their needs actually are.
I noticed your tagline is "We manage the experience." What does that mean when you say manage the experience for your customers?
It's funny that you should ask that because we came up with that tagline as a company, so the employees all had input on that. And I can tell you the first time I visited a customer, I came in and, showed that to them. And their question was, what does that mean? And I was somewhat, I didn't have an answer. Okay. So I said, let me get you an answer on that and we'll reconvene. So I went back to the company, got all the employees together, and we discussed it. And what we came to realize is that our growth as a company, the majority of our growth comes from referrals. So customers that work with us refer us to other companies that they work with, and that has been primarily our growth,
Mhm.
which we're very proud of. And we take referrals very, very seriously. So when we say we manage the experience, we manage the experience. We want to provide our customers with an experience that's worth referring because I don't refer people unless I know firsthand that they're going to represent me, um, and I'm able to stand by that referral. And I don't expect any companies to refer us unless they have firsthand experience in who we are and how we operate. Um, and when they do and they give us a referral, I take that very seriously. And I'm very proud of the fact that customers do refer us. It's funny because when you go into a potential customer, and I always offer to provide them with reference letters, and they look at me and are a little bit deer in the headlights. And I said, well, if you interview an employee, you're going to ask for references, but you know, if you're going to interview a logistics company, you should ask for references as well, because they're handling they're handling everything for your company. And that's a direct reflection on you as a company.
Mhm.
Um, so, we manage the experience again, means that we try to provide our customers with an experience that's worth referring because we do take referrals very, very seriously.
Many people in logistics have a horror story when it comes to managing their supply chain and their logistics company. How does Clutch Global differentiate themselves from the rest in the industry? Does this have to do with just in time versus just in case?
No, you know what? It's funny because, it, the biggest story that resonates with me is the fact that I asked the customer, what issues you're having, and he said, "Okay, I'll tell you one." He goes, "Just happened to me last week," and this story is basically shared by a lot of different people within this industry. It's 4:30 on a Friday. They're having a great day to an end of a great week, and their customer calls up and says, "Hey, you told me that my freight would deliver today, and I'm still waiting, and nothing has been delivered. What's going on?" So now that customer was faced with, "Oh no, it's the end of the day." They're trying to get a hold of their forwarder to try and find out what's going on with their shipment. where the shipment is and when it can be
Mhm.
delivered, and nobody's answering the phone. If they do get somebody on the phone, it's nobody that knows anything about the shipment or what's happening with the shipment. So I go back to
Mhm.
nobody wants to give bad news. They just don't want to do that. So they hide behind a rock and hope that the customer doesn't call so they don't have to give bad news. We do not operate like that. You know, I tell, like I said, I tell every employee that works here, um, there's no such thing as bad news. The only bad news that's never given. So if you don't provide your customer with
Mhm.
information, all of it, both good and bad, they are not able to communicate to their customer to let them know what's going on and try to mitigate through whatever the issues are. Um, we if there is something, it's inevitable things are going to go wrong. That's just life, right? Um, what you need to do is when things do go awry and they go off schedule or go off plan, we contact our customers and try to give them what we're doing to try to resolve the issue, so that they have everything at their fingertips so they can communicate with their customer and let them know what's going on. Um, that's pretty much I believe in that. Every employee that works for our company, when I first got to Clutch, everybody was afraid to make a decision.
Mm.
And we came up with every employee that gets hired on to Clutch gets a card that says ACT, A period, C
Mhm.
period, T period.
Mhm.
And the card represents, I want them, if they come to a crossroad and they have to make a decision, I want them to ask themselves four questions. And if you get four yeses, make the decision. You're never going to be held, you know, I'm never going to hold your feet to the fire if you can look me in the eye and tell me that you got four yeses on the questions.
Mm.
The questions are the decision I'm going to make, is it in the best interest of our customer? Number one. Is
Mhm.
it ethical? Is
Mhm.
it legal? And is
Mm.
it in the best interest of Clutch Global? And if you get
Mm.
four yeses, make the decision. Um, you know, too many companies have employees that are afraid to make a decision and they ask permission on everything they do. And,
Mm.
we don't operate like that. We try to have our customers empowered to make decisions, but we
Mhm.
try also to give them the tools to make the decisions on what they need to take care of.
Well, that must be a freeing experience for a lot of people who are employees because that doesn't happen in probably the bigger shops.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it has to be a personal connection
Mhm.
and it has to be, um, that's, like I said, that's one of the pillars of our organization is the personal touch.
It seems like rates are always at the forefront of discussion when it comes to supply chain. How does Clutch Global address this?
Well, first thing, we're not always going to be the cheapest. Um, we try to provide a rate that is market standard, but we also try to provide a value to what we services that we do provide for our customers. I tell customers if you have to identify what's most important to you and your company. So is it rate? Is it transit time or is it service? What I tell customers is you get to pick two and I get one because they all relate, right? So you can't have the cheapest rate and expect to have the best service. It's like um, you can't buy a car, you know, as is and spend $200 for a car and expect it to run forever, right?
Mhm.
Um, my father once told me you get what you pay for. And there's a lot of truth to that. What you have to do with rate is you have to look at what you're paying, but you also have to look at what you're receiving. So if the value meets what the rate is, then I think you're in good hands, right? Um,
Mhm.
but if you're paying a dirt cheap rate and you're not going to get any updates or the transit time is going to be two to three times longer than what your normal transit time would be, then you have to make the decision what's most important to you. Is it the transit time? Is it the service you're going to get when something does go wrong, and how you're going to be able to track your shipment or be able to get
Mm-hmm.
information in regard to your shipment? Or is it rate? Um, and sadly, I mean, a lot of people, they choose rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then they're the first ones to complain that it's not where it needs to be when it needs to be there. So we try to address that on the front end. I do with my customers, and try
Mm-hmm.
to let them know, you know, cheapest isn't always the best way to go. You have to
Mm-hmm.
decide on what's best for you.
Well, that's a good way to present reality because
Yeah.
sometimes people want it all and they don't recognize that they can't have it all, or they do choose rate and they end up being sorry they did because they get no service and they don't get their materials or their shipments in a timely fashion. So it's good to set the expectations up front as you're doing, it sounds like.
Yeah. One question I ask customers is, what's the impact cost wise if this shipment doesn't make it to your
Mm.
destination and the commitment time that you're committing to? And it's very, very interesting to hear the answers, because, customers will say, well, I'm going to lose this business of,
Mhm.
millions of dollars. Well, then why would you want to go the cheapest route to send something that's going to impact your company in the millions, but you're trying to save $1,000 on a
Mhm.
shipment? Um, yeah, it's
It's funny because if they're shipping something over here, even if they send something FedEx, they're sending it FedEx because they absolutely want it there tomorrow. They pay a little extra for that than sending it through a post office or some other delivery service, but they're willing to do that. So it really should, be the same going internationally. But I do see that a fair number of people will chintz on that only to have buyer's remorse later.
yeah, that's absolutely true. People don't take into consideration what the overall impact of something arriving late, and they just look at the bottom line from a shipment standpoint.
Right.
And
So
that's
what
a
are
good
your,
analogy from
right,
FedEx UPS versus USPS.
right. It does make a difference and they're willing to spend the extra here, but it's a matter of, thinking through what are the options and what do they mean to me and what is really, really important to my customer. And then they need to learn how to properly price their products so they're figuring in the extra that they're going to have in terms of shipping cost or, going through the forwarding and logistics with you in order to make their margin. So,
That's
yeah.
that's why it's important for companies to really create, people throw partnership out all the time, but
Mhm.
it's very important that, whatever forwarding company you tend to use, you build a rapport with them that is a partnership. They need to understand what your expectations
Mhm.
are. You need to understand what their expectations are, and you work together.
Mhm.
You had asked me in the beginning a little bit about freight forwarding. And if you look at it, you know, we're an NVOCC, so we're a non-vessel owned common carrier,
Mhm.
which means we're an ocean carrier, but we don't actually own any boats,
Mhm.
right? We're also an indirect air carrier, which means we're an
Mhm.
airline, but we don't own any airplanes.
Mhm.
So in our business, everybody who ships puts their products on the same boats and the same planes.
Mhm.
So when it comes down to the transit time, when it comes down to the rates, we're all within a ballpark, right?
Mhm.
Some companies look at, they have to have a certain margin in order to be successful, right?
Mhm.
So they drive that. But then they forget about the personal touch or the technology that goes with it to try to support their customers on the front end and the back end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we try to take all of that into consideration when working with a company that wants to ship either abroad or bring products in from another country.
I was wondering what your best customers say about your company because it's refreshing to hear, uh, your honesty in dealing with customers and setting the expectation up front and following through the personal touches. So I wonder what the customers say about you.
We've asked customers, and it's funny because I ask customers all the time for letters of reference,
Hmm.
just because I use them every day when I'm meeting with new or potential customers. One thing they tell us consistently is that by using our company, they save 28% more time in their day, not having to deal with things regarding their supply chain because they
Mhm.
trust that we have it under control and that we're handling it. And if you look at it, time is money and money is time, right? So if you have um, customers that are able to save time just based on how we approach their supply chain, that in turn then saves them money and drives efficiency within their organization. I would say that's probably one of the biggest compliments we get. Also, we get told that, there's a very high trust factor. Every one of our employees has in their signature line, they have two links. One link is if we've done a great job, please hit this link and pass on the compliment, right?
Hmm.
The other link says if there's something we can do to improve our company, please let us know. And I would say overwhelmingly, customers hit the link for give compliments. What we do as a company is if one of our employees does get a compliment sent in, it goes to myself, my son, who is my partner, and our general manager. And then what we do is we respond to the customer, but we give our employees um, we give them a gift card in appreciation for the way they treated the customer. There's an old saying that says if you have a happy employee, you're going to have happy customers, and that is
Hmm.
we live that every day. So we try to take care of our employees so that our employees then in turn take care of our customers.
Hmm. One thing I wanted to ask you about, it seems like in that area, compliance is a bigger issue than people think when shipping internationally. So how's your company dealt with that?
From a compliance standpoint, I think, well, I know, domestically you ship something, it goes from
Hmm.
one dock to another dock. The only thing you really have paper-wise is a bill of lading. But when you come to international, your supply chain could be 10, 15 different links,
Hmm.
and each link has something to do from a compliance standpoint. For
Hmm.
example, if you're exporting goods, you need a commercial invoice, you need a bill of lading, some places you need a certificate of origin, you need a packing list. Some places you need legalization. All of these fall into the compliance of shipping goods around the world. On an import basis, we talked about HTS codes and products are assigned
Hmm.
a harmonized tariff code to identify what that product is and how it will be charged for duty and taxes upon arrival. Um, every country in the world has different requirements when it comes to products and how they're classified within that country.
Hmm.
From a compliance standpoint, we do our due diligence both on the export side and the import side to make sure that our customers are compliant in everything they do. Um, Tariffs are huge.
Hmm.
A lot of people tried when the tariffs were introduced, they just looked for any other HTS code that they could use to skate having to pay the
Hmm.
tariff. The problem with that is U.S. Customs can go back 5 years and audit your records and
Hmm.
fine you accordingly. So there's huge fines that are associated with import of goods and export of goods.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we do for customers or potential customers
Mm-hmm.
is um, we offer a compliance double check program. So potential customers tend to give us, let's say, 5 shipments of their last 5 import shipments,
Mm-hmm.
which would include their bill of lading, their commercial invoice, and then their clearance document that was sent to U.S. Customs.
Mm-hmm.
We do an analysis on all 5 of those shipments and then come back, and it's free. We don't charge anything for
Mm-hmm.
this service. We offer a free compliance double check for our potential customers so that they can see if they're in good hands with who they're working with or if there's issues that they need to address. No obligation to come to us. They can go
Mm-hmm.
back to the forwarder or customs broker they're working with and say, here's some issues that I have, and you need to correct these. Or they can come to us and we'll help them any way we can in order to resolve the issues that are with those particular shipments. It's been a great success, and
Mm-hmm.
we find that a lot of companies they make you hire a customs broker to have your best interests at hand, and there's little things that could happen that could set you in a tailspin or make you non-compliant.
Mm-hmm.
Country of origin might be wrong on the paperwork and nobody
Mm-hmm.
catches it. It's classified wrong as far as the goods. All of those add up to money and can add up to huge fines from the government as far as how it's being imported or how goods are being exported.
Mm-hmm.
Another area, companies that are just brand new to the international
Mm-hmm.
and they want to bring product in and they get a price from their supplier in another country, and the supplier says, I'm going to ship this all the way to your door. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
What they tend to forget is that no matter who pays to get the product there,
Mm-hmm.
they are the importer of record. So
Mm-hmm.
if there's fines that are implemented by U.S. Customs, the fines aren't going against their supplier. The fines are going against them as the importer of record. So it's in a company's best interest to try to handle their goods as much as possible to ensure that their company is compliant. And we help them with that. We try to help our customers to understand in the international arena, Incoterms are terms that assign responsibility every step of the way for shipments that are moving internationally. A lot of companies don't even know what an Incoterm is or what that
Mm-hmm.
phrase is. We try to educate them, act as a resource for them. So when they do have questions, we'll give them our opinion on how we would handle it if we were shipping the goods.
Yeah, that's a big value because dealing with, any bureaucratic, government agency is hard to know everything and hard to know the answers to things. So I could see how your customers would be really enthralled with working with you on that.
Yeah, we probably have a high 90% retention rate on our customers, and we're very
Hmm.
proud of that fact. We don't have a lot of customers that leave. In
Hmm.
fact, I told you about when the rates were escalating and going through the
Hmm.
roof.
Right.
We had some customers that came to us and said, "Hey, we think we would be better served going to a larger company. They can get better rates and they can get better service." 6 customers ended up leaving and go trying that. Out of those 6, 4 of them came back. The
Hmm.
other 2 went out of business because they just couldn't sustain
Mm.
the rate increases. But out of the 6, 4 of them came back to us and said that was a mistake. We were back and we apologize. The other 2 that went out of business, I feel bad the fact that they went out of business, but
Mhm.
it was just they couldn't get over the rate increases and they couldn't get past the
Mhm.
port congestion. So a lot of companies were impacted by COVID and the things that came to be as a result of those.
Well, some of that may relate to pricing and not knowing what they don't know about what it's going to cost really to their bottom line in terms of shipping. So, and the customs and everything else that goes into it. So it's almost you need an education in that before you price your products to sell to your customers.
I try to tell customers that, you have to think of us as an extension of your company.
Mhm.
So, companies have divisions that are dedicated to supply chain, and we want to be that division. So we want our customers to feel like we're an extension of them, and we always try to keep you know, their best interest at hand when we make any kind of decision regarding their supply chain.
I just wanted to thank you, David, for giving us all this information. Although I have customers or clients that are involved in shipping, and so I know some of this. There's so much to know that I think anyone who's starting to import should be contacting you. Even companies who are in the process, they should be contacting you too in order to take a look and audit what they're doing and making sure their compliance is right. It's just such a value to use your services. So again, I wanted to thank you for giving us all this information, and I'll be looking forward to the next time we visit.
Al, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And yeah, my door is always open. My phone is always available. So if anybody does have a need, even if they have a question, just call and I'll try to help anybody anytime with anything they have in regard to their international supply chain.
Great. Well, we're going to post all that information for our listeners to give you a call. And so I'm looking forward to a lot of calls at your office.
I welcome the opportunity and hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you
Mhm.
again for having me.
Thank you.